Introduction. Why global talent now? The term global talent is used in many situations today. But do we really understand its true meaning? Ikuko Atsumi, author of Developing Global Talent, has been involved in global education in the US and Asia for over 25 years. She asks, to be active on the world stage, you must first relativize your culture and have a bird's-eye view of the world. Global is not international, which captures the relationship between countries. Global is a higher dimensional perspective, like looking down at Earth from outer space. There are different cultural codes around the world. Understanding what each culture values and shuns is the first step to becoming a truly global human resource. This book visualizes such cultural composition and takes us on a journey of thought. Rethink how Japanese people stand in the world and learn new things. It leads us on a journey of thought. Chapter 1: How to be a successful Japanese female entrepreneur in the US. Ikuko Atsumi moved to Canada and the US at a young age, building her career in different cultures. As one of the few female entrepreneurs in the world, she was featured in Time magazine and continues to be active on the international stage. She developed an eye for culture through the gaps and friction between different cultures. She has been featured in IBM, Time magazine, and US training sites. She achieved a cross-cultural fusion practice that transcends language and nationality barriers. After returning to Japan, she felt strongly that Japanese young people need to learn about their own culture. She also felt that Japanese youth were only pursuing Englishization without knowing their own cultural position. Her cross-cultural perspective, nurtured through exposure to different cultures, raises alarms about the shallow understanding that global means English. In this chapter, she describes how her life is the foundation of her education, relativizing one's own culture and redefining the composition of the world. A true global talent is someone who has seriously confronted their own culture before taking on the world. Chapter 2: Learning diverse lessons from starting a business and rediscovering Japanese-style management. Through the great challenge of starting a business in the US, the author, Ikuko Atsumi, gained more than just business skills. She gained acceptance of diversity and cross-cultural understanding. Most importantly, it was a journey to rediscover the advantages of Japanese-style management. At the company she founded, Ms. Atsumi worked alongside staff of various nationalities, including Americans, Chinese, Koreans, and Indians. Their working styles, values, and cultural backgrounds differed from one another. Sometimes there were conflicts. However, conflict is the first step toward understanding. To overcome these differences, Ms. Atsumi learned through experience that adopting an attitude of trying to understand others' positions and values is paramount. By starting his own business, Ms. Atsumi also became aware of the power of Japanese-style management. For example, the frontline principle. This management style respects the opinions of those on the ground rather than taking a top-down approach. This made the multinational members feel that their opinions were valued, leading to a sense of trust. Another example is the nurturing culture. The concept of nurturing human resources is an important perspective in developing global human resources. In this chapter, the author discusses how immersing oneself in a different culture can provide a fresh perspective on one's own culture. Globalization is not about conforming to foreign ways, but rather, nurturing the ability to live together in diversity while maintaining one's own cultural identity. Chapter 3: Seeing the world through the filter of culture. We all view the world through the invisible lens of culture. For instance, if someone's behavior from a certain country seems disrespectful, you may be judging them based solely on your own cultural values. Culture is like an iceberg. What you see above the surface is surface culture, including language, dress, and the way people greet each other. Beneath the surface, however, is a much larger, invisible culture. This includes values, habits of thought, ways of perceiving time, social rules, and ways of expressing emotions, the roots that shape a person's behavior and reactions. Looking at others only through the filter of one's own culture can lead to misunderstandings and friction. However, when we become aware of this filter's existence, we can stand on the threshold of truly understanding differences. Ms. Atsumi has experience doing business in various countries, including the US, Asia, and the Middle East. She has come to wonder, what kind of culture does this person have? This question is the best way to protect yourself and understand others. When looking at the world, take a step back and be aware that you are seeing it through the lens of your own culture. That is the first step to living globally. Chapter 4: Understanding the Nature of Globalization. The term globalization can mean many different things. Generally, we think of cross-border economic linkages, information sharing, and the freedom to move goods and people across borders. However, what we really need to understand is how globalization affects the way each of us thinks and acts. Meeting people from all over the world, cooperating with them, and sometimes reconciling differences of opinion, is where globalization really comes into its own. Differences in culture and values can lead to misunderstandings. For instance, speaking in a roundabout way is considered polite in Japan, whereas direct expression is considered trustworthy in the US. Overcoming these differences requires an attitude of trying to understand the other person's culture. Rather than making judgments based solely on our own common sense, we must respect the ideas and customs of others. In other words, the essence of globalization is facing the question, how can we work together based on the premise that we are different? To build trust in the global arena, you need language skills and a flexible mindset that allows you to connect with people who are different from you. This mindset is the foundation of globalization. Chapter 5: The First Path to Developing a Global Mindset. When people hear the term global mindset, they often imagine the ability to work overseas or an attitude of acceptance toward diverse cultures. Of course, these are important elements. However, the foundation of a global mindset is, surprisingly, it is to have a deep knowledge of one's own culture. We are all raised with cultural values and common sense. These values are formed little by little in our homes, schools, and workplaces. For example, you should follow your boss's lead, read the room and refrain from speaking up in meetings. Don't express your opinion until the other person has finished speaking, and so on. These seemingly ordinary patterns of behavior are, in fact, a part of our culture. So, how does understanding your own culture help you develop a global mindset? It is because you can realize that your values and actions are not absolute. In other words, it allows you to look at your culture from a relative perspective. A multicultural lens allows us to naturally accept differences when encountering different cultures. In the global arena, the question is not, which is right, but rather, how can we understand and cooperate with differences? Through a multicultural lens, those who understand their own cultural background can realize that this is the way I think due to my culture, and calmly analyze the differences with the other party. This is the starting point for understanding others and the first step to developing a global mindset. Developing a global mindset is more than keeping an open mind. Facing your own culture, understanding others through a multicultural lens, and cultivating the ability to connect with others will lead to the development of a true, global-minded individual. That is why the first step is always the same: knowing yourself. Knowing yourself is the beginning of everything. Chapter 6: Cultural Map: Classifying the World into 4 Categories. In order to deepen our understanding of different cultures, it is important to first make the differences visible. For this purpose, Ms. Atsumi used the concept of a cultural map. There are more than 200 countries and regions in the world. Each has its own unique values, customs, and behaviors. It is difficult to understand them all individually. We can classify them into several patterns, however. In this cultural map, we categorize cultural characteristics into 4 main types. The first is a culture of legal codes. Rules are central to society. Protestantism Christianity is the prototype. Countries in this cultural sphere include the United States, Canada excluding Quebec, the United Kingdom centered on England, and Scandinavian countries such as Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. The second is a moral code culture. Relationships are central to society. The prototypes are Confucianism, Hinduism, and Buddhism in Asia and Catholicism in Latin America, Southern Europe, and Central Africa. Since human relations are central, culture is relative. Although we know there are rules, we conduct business in a relationship-centered way. There are so many countries like this that, to understand them well, we need to compare the DNA of the ethnic groups one level further down. The third is the religious code. The teachings of God are central to society. Islam is the prototype. It is a country where God's teachings control politics, economics, and lifestyle, and where the teachings of the faith are the constitution. This is, in principle, only found in Islamic cultures. The fourth is the mixed code. It is a culture in which two or more elements of the three codes are mixed prominently. These are regions where value simplification has occurred due to historical circumstances or where people of different religions coexist. Examples include Australia, India, Germany, the Netherlands, and Israel. Of course, not all countries fall completely into these four categories. Even within a single country, cultures may differ between urban and rural areas, as well as between generations. Nevertheless, knowing these classifications will help you sort out and calmly deal with the differences between you and others. A cultural map is not meant to pigeonhole people. It is a guideline to help you recognize differences, prevent misunderstandings, and promote dialogue. With this map to refer to when in doubt, you can proceed with confidence in a cross-cultural environment. The ability to use this map is the first step to building trusting relationships with people from different backgrounds. Chapter 7: Global Education from an Ethical and Legal Perspective. In a global society, language and business skills alone are not enough for success. Another important perspective must not be forgotten. The ability to understand the balance between ethics and law is also essential. There are many different values in the world, and each culture has its own righteousness that it values. It is important to understand the difference between laws and ethics and to think from multiple perspectives. Laws are the minimum rules of society. Ethics, on the other hand, are based on valued judgments about how one should behave as a human being. If we think that as long as we are not breaking the law, everything is fine, we may lose credibility on the global stage. Conversely, an action that is believed to be ethically correct may violate the law in another country. The best global educators Ms. Atsumi have met are very sensitive to they do not impose their own righteousness. They listen first, understand they acknowledge differences and then look for common rules and standards. Global education is not just about imparting knowledge. It's about fostering the ability to live together while respecting differences. In order to do so, it is necessary to not only know the rules, but also to look at the values behind the rules. Most importantly, instead of denying the other person's culture, ask, "Why do you think that?" and engage in dialogue with them. This is the foundation of a truly global education. Chapter 8: Japan's Unique Cultural DNA and Wa-Style Human Resource Development. Wawamato toshi tanasu. This phrase embodies the essence of Japanese culture. Many Japanese people naturally avoid conflict and value harmony. They read the situation, consider the other person's perspective, and think about the big picture. This can be said to be Japan's unique cultural DNA. In contrast, a global society often emphasizes clearly expressing opinions and taking leadership. Japanese people are often evaluated as weak in assertiveness and lacking in presence. But is this really a weakness? Ms. Atsumi believed that the power of harmony Japanese people possess is a necessary quality for today's global society. For example, in a team where diverse cultures and values clash, the ability to unify the entire team is crucial. Coordinator is important. Rather than advocating strongly for one's own ideas, one should carefully search for a path that everyone can agree on. This ability builds long-term trust rather than short-term results. Many Japanese people are active in business overseas and have gained the trust of local people by utilizing this Japanese style. They draw out the strengths of those around them rather than being in front of them. They listen to the opinions of others rather than pushing their own views. They quietly but surely lead their teams to the goal. Global human resources are not just flashy and charismatic. Those who support, coordinate, and build trust behind the scenes are equally important. That is why we should not think of giving up Japanese-ness as globalization. Understanding and utilizing Japanese-ness for global contribution. The world is currently facing division and conflict. In such an environment, the value of harmony, which emphasizes connection with others, is attracting attention as a new style of leadership for the new era. In human resource development, rediscovering Japan's unique strengths and delivering them to the world will be an important theme. In the future, it will be important to learn how to deliver Japan's unique strengths to the world. Learning harmony, connecting with harmony, and contributing to the world with harmony are important themes. Is a new form of global human resource development that we can provide. Chapter 9, 21st Century Learning and Mindset. The world is changing rapidly today. Technology, the economy, and social structures are all completely different today than they were 10 years ago. In this era of rapid change, we don't need people who know the right answers from the past. We need people who can ask new questions. In other words, the question is not what to learn, but how to learn and think. So, what is the appropriate way of learning for the coming age? One shift is from passive learning to spontaneous learning. Students should find their own questions and learn independently rather than waiting to be told what to do. Second, expand from learning completed by individuals to learning through dialogue and co-creation. Coming into contact with different opinions, expressing one's thoughts, and sharing them with others allows students to learn from each other's ideas. This is deeply connected to a global mindset. In order to face common challenges while collaborating with diverse people, flexible thinking and communication skills are required rather than fixed knowledge. For instance, consider students participating in international projects. Many Japanese students feel uneasy about searching for the right answer. On the other hand, international students try to start discussions based on the assumption that they do not know the answer. This difference stems from a cultural difference in learning. To overcome this difference, it is necessary to develop a mindset, a foundation for thinking. Be open to change. Admit what you don't know and be willing to keep learning. Believe in your own potential. This mindset is essential for 21st century learning. Another major theme of modern learning is how to perceive failure. Instead of avoiding it, learn from failure. Act without fear of making mistakes. This attitude fosters the ability to create new value. In the global era, education is not a place to teach the right answers. Rather, it is a place to it should nurture the ability to ask questions independently and continue learning with peers. This skill will be useful in any country, job, or position. Those of us who live in the 21st century have the power to learn again. This power can be harnessed at any age or stage of life. Conclusion: this book provides a perspective on the future. When you hear the term global human resources, you may think it refers to someone special, someone who works overseas, someone who speaks fluent English, a leader who travels around the world. However, through this book, Ms. Atsumi wanted to convey that global human resources cannot be measured by such superficial conditions. Global talent is defined by the ability to embrace differences and find meaning in them. They are people who accept cultural and value differences and are willing to create the future together. the starting point may be a very small step. For example, we can start by asking ourselves, why do I think this way, in our daily lives? When you encounter a different opinion, ask yourself why that person feels that way and try to imagine their perspective. The accumulation of such small actions will grow into a great power to change the future. This book is filled with Ms. Atsumi experiences and what Ms. Atsumi have learned, and the real insights Ms. Atsumi have gained in many global settings. However, you will not find answers here. Rather, it is a trigger to prompt your own questions and a lens to provide new perspectives. The world continues to change. No matter how much technology evolves. Ms. Atsumi believed that, at the end of the day, it is heart and dialogue that connect people to each other. Ms. Atsumi hoped this book will be your first step. And may it be a beacon of courage to believe in your own potential and step forward into a future that connects you to the world.